Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So I'd like to introduce Randy Hucks. Looking through his bio, he actually has held a number of C-level positions at companies. He's the co-founder of two companies, EMC and Flippbox. Currently, he's the CEO of Flippbox and a managing partner at Silicon Valley Partners. And he's actually taken his company, he's bringing jobs here, he's taking his company Flippbox from Florida to here. So everyone give Randy a good warm welcome. So the first thing we're going to try to do is sort of help the audience get to know you. Where are you from, and what did your parents do?
Well, I grew up in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh.
And my father had an engineering background. My mother was a housewife. But my father was pretty much an inventor his entire life. And we were the funky family that had the solar contraptions on the front yard before anybody else did. We were afraid to get off the school bus because of embarrassment of what he was doing next. So that's probably where I got a lot of my drive to come up with different businesses and services and products, etc.
We're trying to set the ambiance here, and we're getting in a commercial. Sorry about that. So, your first company and your background is EMC. So, tell me about the company, and how did you end up starting it?
I realized early on that I didn't really want to work for anyone else. I wanted to kind of control my own destiny. But I didn't really have any money to start a company. But back when I started, those were the great days where you could get credit cards for 0% interest and flip them over and over and over and over again. And I basically took cash advances to the tune of $100,000 and just flipped and started this employment screening company. And then it became successful, and then I was able to get traditional bank financing because then venture capital is really not something you went after, but it was pre-employment screening, drug testing, and physical exam company.
So what inspired you to, what gave you the idea to start that business?
Well, in college, I edited I was the editor of our community newspaper on campus, but then after that for a few years, I, worked at a few newspapers and had a lot of problems with turnover, and realized that that there really wasn't a good way to do references. There weren't a lot of national databases at the time, so I started building a system to do that.
Oh, okay. And I think you were there for almost 8 years or something?
Yeah, about 8 years.
So, what was your exit like?
We were acquired by a larger provider, and it was a good situation for us.
And then was that hard to kind of let go of your baby?
It was, because it was my first significant success.
All right. And then after that, you seemed to take a lot of C-level jobs, and it was pretty impressive. And then you founded Flippbox. So first, what is Flippbox? And after that, tell me, what was the founding story about that?
Sure. Flippbox will be, because we're still in the coding process. We're planning to launch in October. But it's a postal mail management, cloud storage, and file syncing solution, with also legal document storage registry for hard copies of your legal documents as well. But prior to starting Flippbox, I was involved in the real estate market in Tampa, Florida. And this was around the time that the real estate crash was happening. And at the time, I probably had 20 properties or so, had $6 million in mortgages. And I thought, well, everything I had worked for, that I would probably lose my shirt. And even more probably. But so I decided that in order to overcome it, I didn't want to not pay my mortgages. So I started moving around to all of my properties, one after the other, and staging them. And I basically ended up selling everything and paying all my mortgages off. Never had a late payment. But then what happened is all of my mail was all over the place. Even though it was all in Tampa, I was tracking down my mail because it came to this address.
Oh, physical mail.
The physical mail, yes.
Okay.
So the forwarding orders would expire, and it just became a nightmare. And so I finally went to like your general mailbox store and signed up for a box. But then half the time, my mail would end up in somebody else's box, or, you know, I would get other people's mail. And I decided that, you know, there has to be a better way. And so then I started to think about Flippbox and how if we had a national center where we could take in postal mail, scan it using artificial intelligence, and extract the content so that nobody's really reading them, unless there are exceptions, that it would be a great business model.
That makes sense. Okay, because I was going through your thing and I kept on thinking email and I was having a hard time. Now, when you talk physical mail, that makes sense. Okay, I get your business model now.
But then I thought, well, you know, in addition to the postal mail, what are the other challenges? And so legal documents, birth certificates, wills, yeah, you can store them at your bank, but you know, you have to go in during banking hours. And I decided, well, we're going to add that component to the product as well.
Okay.
And you can check them out. So if you need a copy of your deed, you can check it out like a library book. And if you don't need an original, we'll certify it for you. And then, you know, if you need an original, you just, you know, return it to us when you're done with it.
Okay, you would actually take the actual original document.
Absolutely. And store it in a vault.
Wow. Okay. So I think from your history, it actually started in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, our early development work started in Silicon Valley. And it was, you know, and the reason that it started in Silicon Valley is that when I decided to do this, everybody goes to Silicon Valley to start a tech company.
Right.
So I packed up and went to Silicon Valley and was impressed in the beginning, but then it became very competitive because we were not, you know, we weren't a Facebook, you know, we didn't have loads of capital,
Right.
but you know, we were okay with the money that we had put into the project and our investors back in Florida, but it was just a very difficult place to do business. Our employees, even though we had a small team at the time, you know, we were being poached. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
somebody would go to the next big thing.
Right.
And so I started looking for another place to do business, and one of our major investors decided, you know what, you have to come back to Tampa and do this. It doesn't matter where you are. But, you know, he was wrong. And so we started looking for a more affordable place to do business and a place that would be within 2 hours of Silicon Valley. And that's how we met Greater Sacramento and Anna. And it took 7 months to convince me, but she convinced me.
Well, we're happy to have you here.
Every week I would get a phone call like clockwork from Anna. What else do you need from me? You know, and so, you know, we think it's a good situation for us.
Even the mayor talked about you in the state of the city.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we're excited. So when you're in Silicon Valley, was it easy to were you able to raise money there, or
No, we were privately funded, so we didn't even try to raise money in Silicon Valley. What happened with us in Silicon Valley is that one of our major investors had a contact at a huge equity firm, and they basically we signed documents to raise $7 million, and the firm imploded within a few weeks of us receiving our funds, and most people would be really upset with that. And but we took a step back and decided, wow, this is really great for us that we didn't take this money, because the company we weren't even out coding, we didn't have a culture, and I think that it was really the best thing to happen for us.
So after that occurred, shortly after that, you went back to Florida?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then,
But no, and just keep in mind, I mean, we're not your typical startup, because we had an investor network that they were non-venture capital investors. So our story is a little different. Other than, you know, we've had the same struggles as everyone else in terms of, you know, defining the product. And it's so important to, you know, everybody thinks you need to jump into coding right away, and that's not, the planning is more important in the early stages, or as important as coding. I shouldn't say more important.
So tell me, like, you know, like it's interesting. Tell me about your product development. Like, you know, were you getting feedback? How do you get feedback in developing your project? Because it's really an interesting concept. So
well, we did some early beta testing, just with a very raw version of our software, and that's kind of interesting because in doing that, we know that our customer is basically going to be a residential customer. You don't want to get your mail at your home anymore. And so for as little as $29 a month, all of your mail can come to the facility. We can scan it. We drop it into your cloud storage account or our cloud storage account. But in doing research and talking with people and beta testing, the consumer marketplace is probably just as important to us. So basically, eventually, Flippbox will take over a corporate mailroom. So even if it's a sizable employer, all the mail would come into our facility, and then it's scanned, and then you can actually set up keywords. So let's say you have 24 employees who are allowed to see the mail, and then maybe the top 10 executives can see certain items. Like for instance, let's say that the word NSF shows up in a piece of mail. Automatically, someone's alerted. Or maybe unemployment compensation claim shows up. Or a variety of things. You can set that up and then you're notified. But what I like about the product more than anything else is that a residential customer as well as a commercial customer, once we scan the mail, we're going to shred it and then we're going to repurpose it into a product.
So is there a flags that where it's actually documents you don't want to get shredded that, like a driver's license or?
Yeah, those are exceptions. And so with those exceptions, if they need to be forwarded back to your physical address, they can be forwarded back. Or we hold them at our facility until you tell us what to do with it.
Okay. What about packages? How do you handle that?
Again, you would tell us, okay, send this to my address.
Okay.
Or return to sender. So like as a residential customer, you'll get a welcome kit from us, and you'll have stickers that you can put. So if you get mail that you don't want, you just put a sticker on return to sender. But if you get mail that you want us to scan that accidentally comes to your house, you put it in a postage paid envelope. You send it to us, and we scan it and put it into your account.
Okay. So you're still developing the product. Like, what are your plans for the product? How you can, because what you're talking about is actually pretty large in scope. So how do you plan to roll this out or take it to market?
Well, we're going to start in the commercial space first because we can generate revenue right away from that because mailrooms are large and we can show a client how much money they can save. After that, we plan to do a lot of promotion on the residential side through social media, etc. And then eventually, when we decide to go out for a round of financing, we may acquire, say, another cloud storage company, a smaller company, and place those companies under the Flippbox umbrella.
Okay, nice. So really, your first stage is you're going to get like a, for a large company, you're going to be handling their mailroom essentially.
Absolutely.
Outsourced mailroom.
And again, I'm not at liberty to say at this point, but after the mayor's address, we have 4 or 5 companies that are already interested in piloting with us. So we know the needs there.
And actually, what I've seen with Cynthia is that they and with Grind Sacramento, they're going to really go to bat for you and help you bring the contacts here. So
they've been amazing.
In terms of like your move to like where have you guys moved here yet, or are you in the process?
No, we're currently negotiating on the space, and we're very close to finalizing it. But it's a historic property, and it's going to be an incredible adaptive reuse property. So we have to work through some of those issues first. But we'll be in Midtown.
All right. And how many employees do you have currently?
Okay, right now we only have 5. Because again, most of them are developers. But we're planning at the end of this year to probably employ about 40. Wow. And probably the end of next year about 100.
Wow. We're glad to have you here. So, do you have like any general advice to aspiring entrepreneurs? We're full of aspiring entrepreneurs here.
Well, don't be afraid to fail. You get something wrong, try it again. But then, more importantly, if you really believe in something that you're developing, don't let someone talk you out of it. Because you'll have other people involved in your business who they won't see your vision, and they'll make you think that it has no value. But if you believe in it and put the work into it, just stay true to it.
Was it hard to sell your vision? Because it is unique. It's very,
It was very hard to sell the vision, and to be perfectly honest with you, this was too early because people were still adapting like cloud storage for files. And now that everybody's adapted that and they're comfortable with it, I think it became easier. And that's one thing I will say about Greater Sacramento. When I started talking to Anna, she took the time to understand what we wanted to develop, what the product was, and then deciding, hey, you know what, I think this is a good fit for you to come here. She just sit and just nod her head and say, okay, we need another tech company. She took the time to get to know what we were doing.
Yeah, invite all your other Tampa friends to come over here.
Well, we have a few. But you know, part of my background in the past, for about 2 years, I was the CIO of application development for a company called Provest. And they're the largest process serving company for mortgage foreclosures. And I was there for 2 years during the height of the foreclosures, and we grew the company from 300 people to about 1,300 people in less than 2 years. And it gave me the ability to learn how to scale, because when you think about it, all the legal documents that are served, they have to be original, kind of like the mail is.
Right.
And so we had to work through the barcoding issues and archiving and all of that. So that gave me a good background for Flippbox too.
Okay. That's very cool. So I want to go ahead and take some questions from the audience. Alan?
So from a network architecture perspective, that sounds like a pretty big feat you're trying to tackle, because there's a lot of document storage needs there, not just in the immediate, but also in the long term with document storage and archival. So how are you guys tackling that?
Well, no, you know, keep in mind that I'm not a coder or a database person. We have a team of individuals who are dealing with those aspects, and I'd be happy to discuss that with you. You know, later. I just really am not the right person to ask that question to. I'm sorry.
I'll put that question too.
It's a lot of code.
Yeah. It is. I mean, we have a team of 10 developers right now working on the project.
Well, I think the lesson out of that, answer is know what you don't know.
That was a talk to my CTO.
Yes, exactly.
In red?
Yeah, so early on you mentioned that you were privately funded. Could you elaborate on what type of the funding source was? Is it just friends or family? Was it?
Yeah, wasn't family, just business partners from other ventures.
Okay.
And at this point, we've spent very little on development for Flippbox. And when I say very little, I'm talking about less than $400,000. But we plan to invest about $2 million, just prior to launching.
And just out of curiosity, how much or what percentage of the company did your private investors receive for their funding, their angel funding?
Oh no, just about 10%.
10%.
So a quick question, what you're explaining, your business makes a lot of sense, but it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts. So when you were deciding to go forward, I can off the top of my head when I look at risk, if I were an investor, and I can see because of privacy laws, and I'm talking the consumer side, actually, the residential side, I can see a lot of potential risk and litigation and privacy, etc. And I'm sure you came up, some of your folks, with that challenge. How did you handle that when somebody may have come up and said, we're handling people's documents, things can happen?
You mean from the risk perspective of the customers we're going to serve?
Right, that there's a component where you can't control. So they may say, you lost my document.
Sure, and we have a preliminary terms of service agreement that we've already drafted, and it protects us to a certain dollar amount, and we'll have procedures in place to deal with lost documents, etc.
Mike?
I love your model. I think it's a really cool idea. And when you're talking about it, I started thinking about, so if, let's say, some company sends out a catalog, and you don't want to scan that 10,000 times. So I assume you scan it once, and then you've got it coded, if somebody gets it, it goes to them?
Yeah, and part of it, and again, this, as everybody knows, it's a very complex product. So basically, all of the junk mail that's out there in catalogs, we're building a database to house those so that if you wanted it, you can just click and view it online.
But it strikes me that if you've got catalogs and magazines and things like that, scan once, you then have it, so it's, you know,
You don't have to
scan once, download many, but it strikes me that you then have an alternative pathway for distribution then, so that somebody never had to produce it in the first place. If they contracted with you, you could bypass the mail.
That's a great point.
Wow.
That strikes me as a really interesting model.
You just came up with a new revenue stream.
That's it's a cool idea.
Wow,
That's a good
I imagine you deal with encryption, and if so, is that in-house or outsourced?
Well, right now it's in-house with our developers, but again, we're still in the very early stages of development.
Yeah, so similar to Mike's question, as communication becomes more digitized, if it's digitized in the first place and mail, the amount of mail is reduced, which seems to be the trend, how does that work for your business model? That's mail in the future.
Well, and again, you know, that's what we were trying to accomplish. Because, you know, there's a monthly flat fee to use the service, and, you know, we are not really making money based upon the volume of mail that comes in. But, for instance, let's say that you're getting 5 credit card statements that are coming in by paper, and we're scanning it. And when you log into your dashboard, it's going to say, hey, click here to sign up for enrollment for electronic statements. So our goal is to reduce the paper altogether. And long term, you know, we're probably going to have to look at other revenue sources outside of a subscription model.
So people have the option to just, like I get a ton of credit card statements and junk mail, I spend 5-10 minutes just run that away. Is there a model where, an option where you just discard junk mail?
Yeah, you can discard the junk mail altogether.
Not even bother scanning it?
Exactly.
No?
So, it seems like, piggybacking off of your question, that it'd be ideal to, in the future, have some sort of service for archival of email-based bills or notifications or mail, etc. Because a Gmail account's only as good as your max limit, and then you have to either archive it all yourself or delete it. So it seems like that'd be a viable solution long-term.
It really does.
Jessica?
To what degree are Box and Dropbox or some of these other potential competitors, to what degree are they in the same space as you?
Well, I mean, of course, you know, in terms of the file storage, I mean, you know, we could never compete with them, but they, we will actually have a module to where if you want your postal mail to go into your Dropbox account rather than the Flippbox account, you can do that. But for now, basically, your file storage is pretty much free from us. So we're really not a competitor of Dropbox because again, you have your legal documents that you can store, you know, off-site with us, and then you have your postal mail, and they're not offering that.
Right.
Did I answer the question? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Laura?
First, thank you, because my house might be cleaner in the future without all this mail piles all over the place. I have 2 questions, may I? The first one is, what does the post office think of your idea?
Okay. You know, we've talked with a few people from the post office. We're not trying to replace the post office, so we're basically becoming. So let's say there are 10,000 houses that are coming to our address. So basically, all of that mail, instead of the postal truck having to stop at every address, deliver the mail, you know, we're basically, it's a green solution because we're saving gas and wear and tear on vehicles and so forth. So, you know, I can't say, you know, what they think of it, other than the fact that they deal with like mailboxes, etc.,
Right.
and other places like that too. We just have to have the appropriate postal agreements in place.
There might be some regulatory
Yes.
BS. The other question I have is more related to your choice to come to Sacramento. And we Sacramento would really like a lot more tech companies to come. And could you elaborate a little bit more on why Sacramento is a good place beyond just the proximity to Silicon Valley, which is like a really big piece of it, but some of the other things?
Of course, everybody knows, of course, housing is definitely more affordable. But, outside of that, the culture of having a tech company here, I don't think it's as harsh as, say, Silicon Valley or other areas. It's just the lifestyle, I think, is different. And you're basically, we would pay developers and other employees pretty much the same amount of money that somebody would earn in Silicon Valley. So, with that being said, the quality of life is better.
Would you say that you found Silicon Valley to be a little bit toxic?
Well, I don't want to say toxic. I just think competitive. I just think very competitive. And and there are so many large companies. If you're a small startup, it's very hard to get noticed.
Were there any other places you were looking at other than Sacramento that was on the radar?
Yeah, we looked at Orlando, but because of the legal document storage, we didn't feel it was a good idea to store legal documents, original copies in a hurricane zone.
Oh, yeah.
Someone who desired to invest in our company tried to get us to go to Bakersfield. And I basically said no to that just because I just thought it was not anywhere, like it was in the middle of, not nowhere, but it wasn't as conducive to what I was looking for.
So is the facility that's going to store the documents also going to be here in Sacramento?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you also got to look at some place that's sizably stable
Absolutely.
and central.
We're probably,
Dry,
yeah, we're going to need 20,000 square feet even before we scale, because of the fact that we have to have space for the documents, etc. Because that's a big portion of it.
Any other questions?
That was my question. You read my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have great mind. Well, go ahead, Mike.
So you've now taken all the mail and you assume shredded it or done something so that the originals for most of the stuff is destroyed. What do you do with it? What's your recycling plan?
Well, we're in the early stages of determining how we're going to convert that to a useful product. We're thinking from a marketing standpoint, we're probably going to convert them to flip-flops. So we can have, flip-flop Fridays at Flippbox. And after happy hour, we'll try to say it really fast and probably fail miserably.
Mike might have some ideas, so we'll talk afterwards. Laura?
We didn't really talk about Silicon Valley Partners, which is...
Well, that's our holding company at this point, and we've been looking at investing in some other endeavors, but once we really started diving into Flippbox and the potential there, we decided that hey, we have enough on our plate. So other than Flippbox right now, we're really, it's just the holding company for Flippbox.
Okay.
So it's actually Silicon Bay, so I'm assuming it's a Tampa Bay company.
Yeah, because it's a combination of Silicon Valley and Tampa Bay, yes.
Okay, so really you're focused on Flippbox, but are you looking at other startups?
Absolutely. After we launch Flippbox, our current investor network would like to invest. We would like to invest in some other startups.
Okay.
But right now we just feel like we don't have the bandwidth at this point because our plate's full.
I've already talked to a few people that might be interested in talking afterwards. So.
Have you moved to Sacramento?
I'm actually in a hotel at the moment, so yes.
So you have a move date? What's the actual date that
Well, you mean the building or
when you're going to move the whole company? Or?
Well, yeah, we're actually all of the employees that we have now, they're telecommuting from Florida, and we're planning to launch in October.
Okay.
And so that means that over the next few months, we have to hire local talent to supplement the development team as well as, the interview for customer service, et cetera. So we're thinking probably sometime around August. But it's contingent upon our facility because we're trying to deal with some of the issues, with that and making sure that, the renovations are done. But because it's a historic structure, if we run into a problem, we're going to simply lease temporary warehousing type space to get going. But we're definitely launching in October.
So, and in fact, I know a couple of people that are looking for work. And when do you think you'll start, looking for outside work?
Probably in about 2 months.
Okay.
And we did after the nearest state of the city address. We literally did, no exaggeration, 300 resumes in 48 hours, and I couldn't believe it. And what was amazing about it is so much of it was local talent that wanted just to stay in Sacramento and not commute. So and we made it a point to respond to everyone.
Oh, good.
And to say, hey, it's going to be a few more months, setting up our HR system so that you can, submit your resume, etc.
Very excited. Anybody else? Any questions? So I actually have one last question for you. What's your favorite superhero?
Am I supposed to know the answer to that?
No.
It's not a trick question.
No, okay, I know there's a new TV show called Supergirl. That's the only.
My son like that. So anyway, I was just going to say, you're actually our hero here, and we've actually made a game for you. So,
Well, thank you very
so thank
much.
you for coming here and supporting our community, and thanks for coming to Sacramento and moving your company here. So, thank you very much.
We're excited.